Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show tonight. Would like to have you invite your friends, share it out. It's a continuation from last night's show. This is part 2. And it looks like those of you watching on YouTube, when you join us, I did fix the problem last night. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I think it was a YouTube problem. But we're streaming live on YouTube at Duke 1517. And we're streaming on Facebook at 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead. So join us, share it. It's going to be a doozy.
Part 2.
Part 2.
Welcome, everyone, to Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, I'm bringing you part 2 of the interview between Professor Guadalupe Correa Cabrera of George Mason University and 2 individuals that attended a conference with her in Brownsville, Texas in May of 2019. The executive director of the National Butterfly Center in Floresville, Texas, Mariana Treviño Wright, and a member of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe and local anthropologist working with them at the encampment found at the National Butterfly Center, Professor Robert Christopher Basaldú. And the continuation of this, if you don't know, is the second audio that I've shared with you. The first one was of Mariana Treviño Wright's presentation at this conference. She had a presentation about her lawsuit, her gripe with the government about the building of a section of the border wall through the Butterfly Center's private property. And I have been following that group of individuals at the Butterfly Center for a very long time, as many of you know, because this was where the encampment for the activists of the Border Support Network were. And the big reveal in this audio, which took place, I believe, the second day of this conference, is that Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, the professor that was one of the keynote speakers at this event, who presented, our research paper of our joint work, my investigative reporting and her investigations into who moves and motivates the caravans, is that the group of activists involved at this encampment and the National Butterfly Center were actively working both at the ABS conference and at this border security conference in Brownsville, Texas, to censor and silence this professor, to attack her, and to attempt to make her feel threatened, and also to make her feel that, she was confronted with accusations by Mariana and Basaldu that she is putting vulnerable indigenous people and queer people and their lives in danger. And that the reporting of yours truly and the research and the presentation of this information at a variety of different venues by this professor is violence. Violence incited against the people mentioned in our reports merely because we have documented public information about these individuals. And this goes beyond the censorship of the media, which we are. This is a group of individuals that are actively seeking to silence the work of a professor who is an expert in the field that deals with migrants and human smuggling and organized crime in Mexico at the border. So it's very disturbing that their activities at this border encampment are very disturbing. This lawsuit and the people involved in it from the Butterfly Center is also very disturbing. But the fact that their concerted effort to shut down my reporting and this research being propagated by a professor in the field, all of it very, very disturbing, not to mention the fact that I showed you defamatory tweets that were made by the Butterfly Center and one of the crooked lawyers from Al Otro Lado, Nicole Ramos. So all of that by background to give you the context of what we will be sharing with you today, which is the second half of that interview between the professor and these two individuals, Basaldu and Mariana Trevino Wright. But first, I want to thank all of you. I'm going to be getting back to you sometime soon. There are many of you that have been waiting in the wings for me to get to your subject. I've been backed up in catching up with all of my calls and doing coverage for all of these different topics that you bring to our attention. And I apologize for that. We are a small, low-power FM station. We are operating on a shoestring budget. And because of the pandemic, we also have no one but the in-house staff, which
That's
is right. Duke and Nemo.
That's right. And I'm the other half over here. And yeah, I have information too that's been sent to me, and I haven't sent it to Cindy yet. So Ooh. I'm a little bit behind. So as she clears out her cache, was it called clean out your Twinkies or, something yes. like that from the Ghostbusters? Yeah. I'll get that information to Cindy. There's some pretty interesting things that people are out there that are sending us. We appreciate that. For those of you who don't have a direct line to us, you can do several things. You can call us at 701-566-0917, and that's a message line where you leave a message. I check those daily. Also, you can email us, Cindy at kpppfm.com, or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. Go to Facebook, 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead. You can send messages that way too. And also just look at what we've put out there for our live streaming on Facebook and the other stories that we share. If you go to kpppfm.com, you'll find our website. I have to buy an SSL certificate, so it's still... Google's been doing this stuff to websites for the past year and trying to sell a product to make them secure socket layer. So, more protected. But now they're putting out the thing, if you haven't bought their services, they give you a warning on the site. It's a triangle and says, dangerous, do not put in information, don't go to the site, it's dangerous. So we got one of those things on our website right now. But I'm going to clear that up in the next few days. I'm going to have to spend some money to Google. Actually, it'll be to GoDaddy, but that'll clear up that mess. But if you go to the site, kpppfm.com, you can look around at our programming, our history. Also, if you'd like to support us, kpppfm.com/donate. Make a tax-deductible donation to our organization so we can continue developing the program like this we're doing tonight, and plus many other things. If you're on YouTube at Duke1517, you can just hit the little cash button and make a donation right now.
I want to make something very clear for those of you who don't know the nature of our broadcasts. We are a nonpartisan, non-political, nonprofit run station. We've had people that have asked us to cover political candidates, or, there have been a lot of assumptions made about myself and about the nature of my programs since I started working in media. People have tried to pigeonhole me and decide whether I am a liberal or a right-wing nut. I've been labeled everything under the sun. But what I can tell you is that we are non-political and non-partisan. My research into the individuals that later began to show up in Mexico and comprise the Border Support Network was through an investigation of a report of a woman who had her mother taken away from her forcibly at the Standing Rock encampment against the Dakota Access Pipeline. That is how I stumbled onto all of this information. I didn't seek it out. I wasn't trying to target activists. I wasn't trying to learn about their networks. I had no idea that these individuals, media allies, lawyers, groups, veterans, medics, etc., were all working together in tandem with the support and funding of nonprofits and political campaigns.
We also have our own experience, that we went to Standing Rock over 5 times and saw things with our own eyes.
Not to mention that we live here.
Yeah, and we live here, and we know a lot of the people that were, part of the infrastructure and law enforcement and government and those things. So it hit home really, really hard, and it was 200 miles from where we live, so we went there as frequent as we could to cover news that was happening because, in the very beginning, it was something that was looked very, very sincere, but from the very beginning, it was a planned protest with all sorts of elements that they're being used today. And we've had to follow that because we experienced what they test ran in North Dakota, which is a lot of corruption and fake activism and fake actors. And they did a lot of damages, millions of dollars worth of costs to the state and law enforcement. And now they're doing it across the country.
So, folks that have attacked my programming or criticized my programming and said that I have targeted certain individuals, or that I target water protectors, or that I lean to one political party or another. No, my quest is one for the truth. Plain and simple. I think in a very organized way. I was trained as a researcher and as an investigator as a paralegal. So that is exactly how I conducted my reports. And I have continued to do the same. So for me, it has been a great honor to work with Professor Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, not to mention the fact that this presentation, which we worked on for many months, it seemed like a lot longer. But I mean, there was a lot of time and effort put into this presentation, and it's very meaningful because I have not seen anybody that is doing this kind of research in our country, and I think it has merit. It was very disturbing that she was attacked, that we were censored in San Diego, and that that she was being censored again in Brownsville. So I want to talk about what Basaldu, was saying. I think we left off where he was speaking. And he was speaking in defense of the people in the camp. And I showed you that one of the claims that are being made is that we are targeting indigenous people, which of course have the moral high ground in this discussion about border walls and immigrants, right? And that he himself, I don't think he disclosed at any time during the recording of this interview that he is a member of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe. I don't know that he disclosed that to Guadalupe at the time that this was recorded in May of 2019. But what I do know is that prior to in 2009, when he did his dissertation for the University of Arizona, he mentioned being Mexican and Tejano and Hispanic. He said that his grandfather had Kiowa and Cheyenne ancestry. In no place in this dissertation did he mention any connection to the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe. So I think that his claims and that the tribe's claims to indigeneity may be questionable. Some of the people claiming indigeneity and being part of this genealogy of the Carrizo Come Crudo, I believe, are exaggerating and or making up their indigeneity. This is not something uncommon. We've seen it before. Pretendians are everywhere, right? I also wanted to remind folks that not everybody, but a lot of the people that were at this encampment at the Butterfly Center that these two individuals are defending have been parts of different investigations in the U.S. and Mexico and internationally through Interpol. So with that, let me restart. Let me go back to where we started. And I want to share with you the tweet by Reynaldo. That's where we'll start today. The tweet by Reynaldo. That's it right there. This tweet was made by Reynaldo Leaños Jr. And he quotes article attached by Ken Klippenstein about how the U.S. military is monitoring anti-border wall groups, including an interfaith group peacefully protesting Trump's family separation policy, according to the internal Pentagon documents leaked to Ken in this retweet. And Reynaldo quotes, the extremists belong to a known anti-border wall group alleged to have direct action camps in the McAllen, Texas area. The group appears to have been the Rio Bravo Action Camp hosted by the Democratic Socialists of America's Rio Grande Valley chapter, Carrizo Come Crudo tribe of Texas. This is important because it is a reminder of the political ties of the camp, the media allies that are speaking about this persecution of the people at this camp. Here's the Intercept article that was attached to that tweet by Ken Klippenstein, titled "The U.S. Military is Monitoring Interfaith Groups," blah, 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 blah. And as you can see, they're talking about, in the Intercept, they're talking about this in conjunction with their media partner, TYT, the Young Turks. So who are the media allies that we see again and again, from Standing Rock to the encampments at the border to the caravans, and now protesting and burning and looting in a city near you? What we see is people connected to the... can you put that back up, please?
Sure.
Thank you. You can see that these people are people that are connected to the media allies of the Young Turks. the activists that went down to Standing Rock. And if you scroll down, as you know what was going on at these camps, right? You remember what was going on at these camps. We'll cover it in a moment. But they're saying that this was actually a peaceful protest camp where they're peacefully protesting the child separation policy. Now, do you recall, because we covered a lot of stuff that happened at that camp. The Sierra Club went down there with veterans to camp. They had a number of different drone pilots that we documented went down to the camp. Many of them were from Standing Rock. We documented that they were preserving and then defending previously abandoned cemetery that they claimed contained bones of veterans and indigenous people, right?
Right.
We saw protests along the levees protesting the building of the border wall, right? We saw groups of students and activists, etc., going to the camp, taking tours, looking at the different wildlife and camping out as they stayed there. We saw groups of people traveling up and down the roads that Border Patrol travel and making claims that they were being surveilled, and also that they were seeing as people who were obviously illegal border crossers going through the river that were coming up into their camps. So all of that was discussed. Do you remember the part where they were doing peaceful protests against family separation?
No, I don't recall that at all.
Okay, let me remind you who was involved in those protests, because there was another group of people that interconnected and visited these camps of activists that were called the Tornillo Occupation. They were camping out at a detention facility that was housing children for some time, many months, in a city. That encampment broke up, moved on, and went on to do different types of actions, which included the ones that I reported on yesterday, where they had Patricia Akwomu climb on top of a building and get taken down by the police and a cherry picker. And they also did protests on the streets where they had a giant inflatable Trump. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there was a lot of other things that were taking place. And they also went to the Border Museum, the Border Patrol
I remember that, yeah.
Museum. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, just to bring you up to speed, there was a bunch of these activists. Not all of. I mean, it was like think of the encampment like a way station. You're going to be going to different places in the Rio Grande Valley. Maybe you're going to go be one of the volunteers that's supplying and helping the migrants at the Brownsville encampment. Maybe you're going to be going to someplace in New Mexico or Arizona. Maybe you're part of protests in the Rio Grande Valley. But this was a way station where people came, where they got trainings at different secret camps, and where they then went off to do their protesting. Now, the other part of this equation that I want to remind people of was in the recording that we heard yesterday, in which Guadalupe Correa Cabrera is desperately trying to ask questions about who the people are that are moving and funding the caravans according to these two individuals. Since they attacked her, drove her up, Mariana Treviño Wright was so hostile, she basically cornered Guadalupe Correa Cabrera to demand answers. She was very angry with her presentation. So, trying to be objective and open to all possibilities, Guadalupe questioned, where are the people you want me to look at, and how are they moving the caravans? How are they funding the caravans? And in her response, Mariana Treviño Wright told Guadalupe in yesterday's part of the recording that there are two people she should talk to that have a lot of information And one of them is Juan B. Mancias. And the other one is the Society of Native Nations. Now, you also recall that part of those protests that took place in Texas happened at the State House, I believe in Houston, where they were protesting a law that would further criminalize protesters and organizations that were supporting them, in which states or projects like the building of a pipeline were interrupted and cost the community millions of dollars or thousands of dollars. And you saw that protest happen at the courthouse with the Society of Native Nations. You remember that guy, Frankie Arona, that wears that headdress thing with all of the feathers that stick out on the sides? So I want to show you Juan Mancias and the Society of Native Nations mashup here with Frankie Arona and the Sierra Club, who you also saw at the encampment. Now, for those of you who don't remember, Frankie Arona is a felon that has a history of sexual crimes. Okay, violent sexual crimes. I showed you the history of Frank Arona on a previous show. And I'm going to remind folks of who the groups, organizations, and individuals are that were at this encampment that is being defended so vehemently by these two individuals, Mariana Treviño Wright and Robert Christopher Basaldu, because they are ignoring that in their fiery and passionate defense of the encampment at this Butterfly Center. Listen for yourselves.
Timed exactly the same thing ahead of the budget battle. Now we don't have to have another crisis because we have a state of emergency and he's just raiding the coffers under the state of emergency. So miraculously, the other thing is, you want to do your statistical analysis, go back 100 years and catalog how many Border Patrol agents have ever been killed on duty.
How many? None.
Virtually none.
I mean, I
There
don't
are
have
some-
any.
Exactly.
I don't
It
have
is
any in
the
my
safest law enforcement job ever.
ever. No, I know.
So the
I
idea
know.
that one dies right ahead of or right in the midst of, in fact, I think
fish and game wardens die at a higher rate.
exactly.
Fish and game wardens die at a higher rate.
There,
Yeah,
in fact,
tell them.
it's something like since 2000 to now, I think it's like 32 Border Patrol agents have died.
But they are dying
the majority
for,
of them-
like a heart attack or something.
Okay, right. Or, driving home when they got off shift and they fell asleep and rolled their car.
As opposed to foul play.
My daughter's boyfriend, her father was a Border Patrol agent who died. He drowned while rescuing migrants in the river. He drowned. He was not murdered. He was not killed by migrants. He was
Migrants are never going to kill the Border Patrol agent.
So,
I mean,
so here again, we have like this lightning strike. How fortuitous for Trump.
that's correct. That's correct. I have other questions. Maybe
Yeah,
you can
no,
help
we're
me
still
to,
recording, so,
no, it's very important. No. All what you're saying is very important. But I'm sure that I don't want to miss this opportunity because you know how the border, the geography. I'm gonna do all the trip. But why why the Butterfly Center? And I asked you that question yesterday. Why the border wall is going to be built there?
Well, for one, they're trying to build it from California to Brownsville, from San Diego to Brownsville.
And do you think that's going to happen?
He's in the process it's happening. He's in the process of, he's only about $5 billion short right now of funding.
Okay, did you hear what she just said? So she asks, the question was, why are you being targeted? Why do you say the Butterfly Center or you are being targeted? Why are they building the border wall there? And she says, well, they want to build a border wall all the way from the California border to the Texas border. And Guadalupe asks her, do you think that's going to happen? And Mariana responds, Yeah. And he's almost got it all funded. Remember, these are the people that are involved in the lawsuit against We Build a Wall. These are the very same people that have been telling you this entire time, no border, no wall, open borders. These are the same people that have said the wall won't work. The wall they built doesn't work. The wall they built will fall down. You don't need a wall. The wall won't stop migration. The wall will not be funded. Mexico will not pay for the wall. The president can't pay for the wall. There's no appropriation by Congress for the payment of the wall. The same people that on the one hand are saying this one thing publicly about the wall, privately, they know that not only does Trump intend to build it, but that at this time of this recording, which was in May in 2019, he already had most of the funding he needed to build it. Listen some more.
The whole thing.
But
and he's awarding contracts as soon as he gets the money.
Yes, but I don't.
Pulling those contracts back is impossible.
I know, but not the whole border.
Yeah, there's already over 700 miles built.
Right.
He only has to fund another 800 miles. And so far, he's funded almost 200 of that. So he's only got like another 600 to fund. And he's in the process every day of getting more billions for that.
Yes, but what about, I mean, not all the segments of the border will serve the purposes of contractors in general. Why you believe this is going to be the whole thing? In my view, this is going to be just by segments. For example, that's why my question was why it started there. Why Tijuana? Why, the Rio Grande Valley?
Well, they started in populous centers. For one, they started like San
property.
Diego, El Paso, and they started in urban areas. Then they went to the abandoned areas where they already had federal land, so they didn't have to get anybody's permission.
Exactly.
Now they're, as they did a decade ago, going through the onerous, awful, publicly unappealing process of taking land from private property owners. In America, private property is sacrosanct.
I know.
So it's the last thing. It's
private property because it was stolen.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, the principle, in the American framework.
Well, you can't have the American framework without the original genocide.
Exactly. I'm not going to argue that, but I'm saying for presidents now, if you want to step on a landmine, you exercise.
Okay. So, this is funny. Let's just cover what happened right now. And let me be real clear that Guadalupe Correa Cabrera is an expert in her field. She has been defamed publicly by individuals at the Butterfly Center, at Al Otro Lado, in Twitter, saying that she is targeting her research, which is funded by the Department of Homeland Security through her university, George Mason University. None of that is true. Yes, she's a professor at George Mason University. No, the Department of Homeland Security is not funding her. But the work of professors like her are often picked up and funded by groups and government entities that need that information for their security or research. And this work, this paper, this presentation is no different. Where can someone find a network analysis of so many of these activists that have been posing a security threat to our country? Nowhere. You can't find it anywhere. You can see a tiny bit of that work proposed by Professor Correa Cabrera and myself that took place in the presentation at this conference. We did a small sliver, a snapshot of a network analysis of these activists so that we could show the power of doing that, and so that we could show different entities that need to have this information to ensure the security of this country, how important this research truly is. So you have to understand that censoring her, discrediting her as an expert in that field has a purpose. It's meant to silence the work. It's meant so that this work isn't looked at, isn't funded, isn't supported, and doesn't continue to see the light of day. Go ahead and continue the next part of the... Oh, wait, I wanted to make one more point about what Balsadul has just said. The other part I found really interesting about this is that in her repeated attempts to get a straight answer, just at least one straight answer out of Mariana about why she's being targeted and how the oil companies are involved in funding and moving the caravans, and Trump, and not the activists in these camps. And her response is that this administration, in an attempt to build their border wall, are using eminent domain to take private land. That's the the nuclear bomb. If you want to rock the boat in America, you start taking people's private property, right? And Basaldu interjects and says, no, remember, indigenous people and the genocide and theft of land takes precedent over your white people private property issues. And she's like, okay, right, of course. I get it. I know that. I already knew that. But yeah, but I mean, private property is really super important. He's like, yeah, but you can't have that unless you recognize that you stole it from indigenous people. So they're having a little, who's more important? Which story, which narrative are we going to use to justify what we're saying? And they're having a little bit of a spat over that. Continue.
Exercise eminent domain.
Right.
Trump doesn't give a shit, and he's got all this kind of profit motive, and who knows who's got the choke collar on him other than the Russian oligarchs.
What would be the connection between, if there is a connection between Donald Trump, the oil companies, and foreign influences, and
well,
Russian companies?
just study Trump. I mean, he's the number. He boasts about debt. How he loves debt, how debt is the best way to do anything, how debt. You take other people's money to do things, you steal it, you don't pay it back, circumstances change, you leave them holding the bag, blah, 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 blah. And then look at his relationships with bankers and foreign debtors and investors. He has a Supreme Court justice right now because his banker's father retired. Donald Trump's banker at Deutsche Bank.
That's the father of the guy.
His father is a Supreme Court justice that just decided one day to retire.
Right.
A job for life.
For life.
That most people will never, ever let go of.
Is he connected to the oil companies or the energy interests?
He's connected to the debt and probably, you would have to dig into Deutsche Bank. But I'm sure Deutsche Bank and their interests finance pipelines and refineries and projects all over the world. And I'm sure.
Okay. So that we are clear, the question was, because she says Trump's got all of these different people that control him. Who knows who's holding the reins besides the Russian oligarchs, which are, of course, a given, right? They're assumed to be holding the reins of Trump. And the professor patiently asks, how? How are you making these assertions? Can you even connect? Assuming there is government influences from outside, how do you make those connections? And then she goes off on this weird tangent about Deutsche Bank and Trump's bankers, somebody's dad retiring. So basically, she's got a beef with the appointments to the Supreme Court. How many different topics have we covered that she has a problem with? I have yet to hear her advocate for an ocelot or a butterfly or a lizard or a tree or a plant in this native, National Butterfly Garden. Have you?
Nope.
I haven't heard her say anything about the butterflies, but she's talked about abortion. She's talked about pipelines, Russian oligarchs, foreign government interference, and Supreme Court appointments. Does that sound political to you? Does it sound like this woman has a politically motivated axe to grind? Because it certainly doesn't sound like the objective opinions of somebody with evidence. Listen some more.
Sure, they have Russian oligarchs pulling their strings.
I have to get going. I have other commitments, but I know I'll see you.
Yes.
So.
I'll see you this weekend, I hope. If you make it out to In Memoriam,
I
which I completely forgot to mention in my presentation.
It's okay. I'm flying to Boston on Sunday morning.
Okay.
So I'm heading out there, but I'll be there for a while and then back. So I'm sorry I'm going to miss it.
Well, Godspeed, and we'll see you when you get back.
See you soon.
I completely forgot to mention In Memoriam. Yeah.
I hope to talk to you again soon.
Of course.
Stuck in the traffic. Okay, it's 2:45.
Okay.
Push it along.
Okay.
You would have to go through, and that's going to be hard because Deutsche Bank guards everything.
Right.
And people bank with foreign companies and foreign interests and all this for that reason. But, I mean, it's like we all know how corrupt the Vatican is.
What is the connection to Mexico? Energy reforms seem to be at some point, when Hillary Clinton was the State Department head, she also advocated for the shale gas development in Mexico and all that, right? How would this affect, because it seems to me that we're talking about different business groups or not?
No, I would imagine all the actors are very similar.
I would imagine the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But
it's kind of like in McAllen, Doctors Hospital at Renaissance,
right?
An organized criminal enterprise. They fund both sides of the aisle all the time.
All the time.
Republican, Democrat. They have a preference for one or the other. Gelman likes the Republicans. Alonso likes the Democrats, but they make sure they fund both sides of the aisle in every state.
Right.
If you look at their PAC, they give money in every single senatorial race across the country.
Exactly.
Because they need those people on their side.
Right.
It's the same thing with the oil and gas companies.
Right. Exactly.
And they hedge their bets. They're no different from, hedge funds, from Wall Street operators. They're going to long and short politicians and races. And
what's going to happen in the future?
I think it's very much like Todd was laying out for us. Climate change is inevitable. They are going to take our river from us. T. Boone Pickens, a Texas oil man, billionaire, said many years ago that water is the new oil. There again, what's the connection?
And
oil
people
and gas,
is a new
pipeline.
drug. And that's why we have all these, criminal groups. It's just like the provision.
But see, that's not new. Since the beginning of time, we've had slaves for sex, for housework. We've had child brides. We've had, sexual perversion or whatever you want to call it. There's nothing new under the sun in terms of how humans do one another.
That's right. But now, after provision, drugs, now it's people, the provision, it generates a lot of criminal groups and violence around that subject.
Around the trafficking of people?
Trafficking and smuggling.
Yeah. But that's been going on forever. It is the number one economy worldwide.
Right.
So, are we dismissing it then? Because, she keeps telling her, Mariana Treviño Wright keeps telling Guadalupe from the beginning, why don't you do your network analysis on Trump? Why don't you do your network analysis on all of these other people, these Russian oligarchs and the oil companies and Kelsey Warren and this and that, instead of the vulnerable indigenous people at the camp? She says, this is a new commodity that people are making money off, these contractors, and Guadalupe says, and people are being smuggled. And she says, are you talking about smuggling and trafficking of people? She's like, yeah, it's a big problem because it's a business, because people are profiting off of it, and also people are taking advantage of it. So you have people that are exploiting those vulnerable migrants, that are taking advantage of them, taking their money, taking their freedom. And she says, oh yeah, that's been going on forever. So we shouldn't look at it? We shouldn't focus on it? I mean, don't you think that was a very bizarre thing to say in how she said it?
Yeah, and she mentioned slavery. She went right to sex slaves and sexist, sex that, and I thought it was like forced labor and servitude.
But I mean, what a response to say, yeah, one of the new commodities is the migrants. The migrants themselves are being commodified, bought and sold, moved, used. And her response is like, yeah, that's been going on forever. That's not new. So what, are we supposed to ignore it? All right, let's continue.
Worldwide.
It's interesting to see how many Cubans and Africans and extracontinental immigrants are arriving to the southern border and being brought by the caravan organizers to the United States. It's weird.
But not just here. They're being moved all over the world.
All over the world. They are part of a transnational smuggling, operation.
And it is the largest economy in the world and has been for many, many years.
What would be the groups that I should do more research on to also make use of the same type of network analysis that, you mentioned a couple of names.
I do think what Christopher was saying in terms of networks does matter. There are good actors and there are bad actors. And I think that these spectacle activists, basically, as you labeled them the other day, I didn't know a lot of them. I probably recognized about half of them.
That's a lot.
I don't think they're bad people, May some of them be self-promoting, opportunistic, whatever.
I see them as.
But are they predatory?
No, but they might be the instruments of others that, in Standing Rock. Not all of them. But as you said, there was a turning point in Standing Rock.
And the turning point was not from those
veterans.
People. It was the government infiltrators that came in as part of the veterans group.
Right.
That's my understanding.
It was Wesley Clark Jr. who was...
Well, and there were others. My understanding is about half of the veterans... Once the Veterans for Peace and all that, all those, arrived, that about half of them were actually government operatives or legitimately bad actors.
What in the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Prove what you are saying. Prove it. Because we looked and we reviewed a lot of the material that was coming out. I didn't speak directly with the head of Tiger Swan, but he did make public statements in response to questions about where his people were. And they said unequivocally that nobody from their organization at Tiger Swan went into the encampment, period, at all. They were never there. Did they get contracted to work with the pipeline company? Yes. Were they coordinating? Yes. They were never in the encampment. She is making a claim that has been proven false over and over again. Not to mention the fact that it doesn't sound like she was there. We were there. We saw when the veterans came. I did more interviews with one of the people that called the veterans to come, Wesley Clark Jr., in the year and a half or two following Standing Rock, probably more than any other reporter, because we were speaking for a very, very long time. And I questioned and I pushed back on Wesley Clark's assertions that Tiger Swan was in the camp, that his life was in danger, that he was just about to be killed. I questioned and re-questioned whether or not there were actual Tiger Swan or black, whatever they called themselves before.
Blackwater.
Or any kind of military mercenaries. Now, were there FBI agents that were sent down there? Maybe. Some people reported that there were. We know that there were FBI agents involved with people that were at the encampment because Red Fawn Fallis went to jail. Because her boyfriend was an FBI agent and gave her access to a gun which she should not have been carrying. Also, remember all of those hundreds of thousands of dollars that were raised to free Red Fawn? Wonder what that money went. They're still fundraising for her. She just got out of jail.
Needs a place to stay.
She just got out of jail, and Phyllis Young and her daughter were part of the welcome home crew that went out to meet her at the airport. Two of the women that helped to start the encampment. So let's talk a little bit about this group of people in the network analysis that Guadalupe and I worked on, that she claims she knows about half of them. She knows about half of the people on there. Let's take a look at some of those folks. Here's a picture of Basaldu at the camp with some of the folks that were there. And you'll see that Douglas Warren, one of the people with Marianne in the picture right behind me. There's Marianne in the middle. This is Doug Warren, another sex worker, anarchist, Antifa, that went to the encampment with many others. In this photograph, you can see Christopher Basaldu standing with a group of people at the camp. Many of them look like they're students. Most, if not all of these people are not part of the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe. They have an AIM flag flying high behind them along with the Carrizo Come Crudo tribe's flag. Warren, a.k.a. Nightlife Jones, is standing in the middle of the group there wearing a People's Communist China shirt, right? Communist China CCCP shirt. Isn't that a Communist China shirt?
I think so.
And down all the way at the end is V. Patel, media personality at the camp, working to report the propaganda from the side of the campers, along with Garrett Blair, both working and publishing with Intercontinental Cry. So that's one of the groups of people that were there. Let me remind you that these folks were on a watch list, and they weren't just aware of the fact that they were on the watch list. They're proud of the fact that they're on a watch list. Doug Warren, I showed you yesterday, mentioned that he knew many of the people on the Department of Homeland Security's watch list. Just like Mariana Trevino Wright knows a lot of people that were in the presentation done by yours truly and Professor Guadalupe Correa Cabrera, Warren was bragging about how he knew a lot of the people that were on the Homeland Security watch list when he posted it on his wall. He also posted this telling other activists that if they're not on a government watch list by now, they're failing. They're not doing it right. If you're an activist and you're not on the government watch list, you suck. Pretty much. Right?
Right.
I'm sorry. Nemo's just told me that that is actually the Russian abbreviation for the Soviet Union, a different communist country. But I knew it was something having to do with communism. I forgot what it was. Anyway, here's another one of Douglas Warren posts where he shows a black bloc wearing activists in some kind of a riot scenario where they're using a racket to lobby back a canister of tear gas. And it is titled professional level for activist. What's your activist level? Well, if you're dressed all in black and have all this gear and are able to lob tear gas canisters back at police, then you are activist level professional. You're at the top. That's what you need to be, professional. And that's how he lives. That's what he does. Take a look at this one, in which he is posting about the fact that law enforcement came to look for one of their campers. There's Basaldu fighting with the cops in the background in his red shirt. This is Warren's post from his Facebook page, as you can see. And in it, he's claiming that the person that the FBI came to look for wasn't even at the camp. I showed all of you that Jesse Garcia was definitely at the camp. The man they were looking for was there. And that 2, it was not the FBI that was looking for him. It was local law enforcement. And let me show you another instance of Warren on his Nightlife Jones page posting about a confrontation with riot police involving a cop on a horse. You can see the rioters in this video crowding the officer that's on the horse, and you know that those horses can get spooked. Let's look at this video of them on the cops on the horse, and the person that was directly in front of the horse, kind of walking into the horse, pushing back on the officer, is Douglas Warren. Here he is confronting the cop on the horse. It's very quick. He's right in front. Wearing the hat. And then they are get tear gassed. You see how he's like finger wagging at the horse and the officer and walking toward the horse and the officer, and then a whole bunch of tear gas or whatever that is gets deployed. Pepper spray gets deployed.
Yep.
Okay. These are people who confronted the cops on the horses at the camp. The Border Patrol that rides around and surveils the area where many people cross illegally. Here's that photo. And they also were involved with Myron Dewey, another one of the people that was stopped and questioned by Homeland Security and was part of that watch list. Okay? I don't know for a fact that Douglas Warren is on that, but we know a lot of the people that were, and many of them were at this encampment. Myron Dewey is just one of the many drone pilots that also went down to the Butterfly Center to do what? To do counter surveillance to the Border Patrol so that they could know where Border Patrol was. And this is very disturbing given the fact that they were working with people that were convicted of smuggling humans. Here is a post by Garrett Blair, one of the media allies you see in that photograph, being detained outside of the border of the National Butterfly Center, and posting about the fact in this long-winded post that you can see that he refused, like some kind of a trained activist, kept asking whether he was being detained, kept saying that he refused to consent to a search, and he continually told officers that he wished to remain silent. They kept asking him about his protester activities, and he talks about this confrontation and what he was doing. That's not his first time having a confrontation with cops, because he did it at Standing Rock too. Remember, he was one of the embedded journalists that went out to Standing Rock to write propaganda fluff pieces for the activists there. Here he is behind a patrol car at Standing Rock. Okay? Do you see the pattern? Here is Warren and Orlando Cruz and Vanessa Dundon. Vanessa Dundon and Orlando Cruz are part of the natives that we saw at Standing Rock. And these are people, one of which had a violent clash with the police and had damage to her eye. The other of which spent a lot of his time intoxicated on some kind of substances. I don't know what kind of substances they are. Why don't you check out a video that he did while he was at the camp and you tell me, what do you think he's on? What do you think this guy is on? Take a look for yourself. Here's one of the activists.
That's all I can do.
This is disturbing. He just like passed out, like he went somewhere. Back to live streaming. He doesn't even know where he left off.
More people that would come down here
He wishes people would come down here.
just to see.
Look at his eyes.
Who
Ah.
knows? He might not want to leave.
Who knows? You might not want to leave. Look at his creepy eyes. Oh my God.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try and go to bed. Get a little rest. Okay. I don't know what the plans are.
I don't know what the plans are, he says. I don't know what the plans are either, but there's drugs involved.
Yeah.
Drugs that make your eyes roll into the back of your head while you keep talking like you're possessed by Satan. And let me remind you that the drone pilots that were involved there, they're not like, these pure as the driven snow individuals. Not only are they connected to drug use, here's Mobby Mason Leonard, one of the other drone pilots, posting about how they're taking actions every single day. When they get bold, he says, we show our fearless nature. A helicopter was hovering about less than 100 feet away from one of our villages and about 100 feet off the ground. Based on the craft we can identify, this seems to be a military aircraft, but I could be wrong. They looked to be scanning in the wooded area nearby. I don't know why they came so close to camp other than to waste fuel. I thought their ground surveillance was state of the art. I guess not. So the drone was deployed to observe. At one point, the helicopter pilot looked to be flying toward me. I almost descended to land, but like I stated, we are fearless. Here's some of our rough footage from the air and ground. I've also added footage from the day before of the helicopter, which looked to be flying on both sides. The Carrizo Come Crudo is doing almost daily actions at the border, trying to protect the National Butterfly Museum, Eli Jackson Cemetery, and the creatures who need these areas. Okay, so they were not just going and having confrontations with the Border Patrol. They were using drones to have these confrontations with the helicopters flying in the air, surveilling them. Sound familiar? We
Yep.
saw the same exact thing happen at Standing Rock. Mm-hmm. Same people, same everything. Here's another one of the drone pilots associated with this encampment. Louis Monsivice, one of Orlando's good buddies. And Orlando and Monsivice are entertainers. Orlando sings and Monsivice acts. In fact, he's been the stuntman in many movies. He's been a stunt double for Machete.
Yep.
This is a guy that also flies drones, but incidentally, he is a felon. He posted about, here's Evan Duke III, one of the founders of the Border Support Group and the encampment at the Butterfly Center, saying that Monsivice is an ally on the border, giving us reports. Remember what he was reporting about when he was in that area at the Rio Grande Valley? next to the Rio Grande, he was reporting about how smuggling humans, it can be done the wrong way and it can be done the right way, like the way he and his family do it as a business. He also talked about needing someone to help him move peyote. Here's his post about peyote. Here is his video talking about being a smuggler. Let's listen.
This isn't what the news outlets have allowed you to understand. This isn't human trafficking. There is 2 or 3 different ways of human trafficking. And the way that we went about it, we were a family-run industry. We took damn good care of every individual that came with us in every route and every direction. And we have all those people that will vouch and will pull for us and for myself. We were bringing in people that were asylum seekers, were also people that wanted to get here on all scales. There was none. We would have been shut down by our bosses and our leaders in a heartbeat if there was any wrongdoing to any of our family members that we were helping. It is business. Yes, it is a money-ran business where one particular person or persons or group provided a service to be able to transport individual people that were picked and chosen by families to come towards these companies, say so to speak, because we were good at what we did. We were fair about what we did. We helped our people. And this is one of the things that I haven't talked about to many people. I will always be proud of what I've done. I will always take it with honor of the people that I helped. I will always take that to the other side, knowing that I did my part to help.
You did your part to smuggle people.
Yeah.
It is a business. Did you see that he called it a business? He didn't say, I'm a volunteer coyote. I do this for free. I invest my money to take care of my relatives who I feel have a right to be in this country as an indigenous person. No. He said this was a business for money. And his bosses that he says, if he was doing anything wrong, would shut him down. Well, you know who those bosses have to include, don't you? Because nothing travels through Mexico without the cartel's blessing.
Exactly.
Nothing. Nothing travels through Mexico without the cartel's blessing. If you don't get their blessing, you might find your head hanging from a bridge. Right? So, you're going to tell me that Mariana Treviño Wright, who is literally pictured with 2 people who have close ties to those people that went down to Mexico, Tijuana, that were working on this indigenous aspect, right? This indigenous part of it, in which I have shown you there are numbers of people with felonies, with violent histories that have sexually violent records. On the other hand, we have another one of the sex workers that we found at this encampment, and the violent clashes with police that many of these people are involved in doing. And you think Mariana Treviño Wright was oblivious to all of it? She didn't notice the people, drug-addled people staying at the camp, people who were consuming drugs and alcohol staying at the camp. She didn't notice? How would you not notice the guy that has his eyes rolling into the back of his head? How would you miss that you have an encampment at your butterfly center, that you're marching and fisting, raising your fist alongside of people that are impaired, that are liars, that are frauds, that are dangerous? I don't know how that escapes someone. But listen to her as she continues to defend the likes of Evan K. Duke III, who's recently arrested in Portland for his activities in rioting, and Mark Lane. Take a listen.
Working with the CIA or the oil and gas companies, mercenaries for Tiger Swan or whatever. They were all, that about half of them were that. And that's when everything started to go sideways. It wasn't the teenagers who came for summer break or spring break or whatever to be a part of the movement that fucked everything up.
And what about
But my point back to this is, if you want to do network analysis that exposes the bad, it has to be the Abramovich, Trump, Deutsche Bank, blah, 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 blah. It has to be.
Do you have more names?
I mean, just start. It's like a little thread on a sweater. You start with those and start pulling. Evraz.
The more that I have, the better it is.
Evraz. Well, you can start with, go to Evraz. And they have a Wikipedia page. There are 3 Russian oligarchs who hold the majority of stock. Roman has the most, and then there are 2 others.
Roman Abramovich.
And so start with those guys, and then start looking at what boards and what lawyers. And I mean, when the Mueller report comes out, you got to read that whole fucking thing. The first person sentenced in the Mueller investigation was a lawyer who represented Evraz, who worked with Paul Manafort and Rick Gates. These are the bad.
You got to read that whole Mueller report,
right.
and she keeps pounding her fist on the ground.
Yep.
Pounding, and she is angry. Okay? Notice that you want to do your network analysis. If you're going to do your network analysis and you want to expose the bad people,
go over there.
You have to do it on these people. You have to. It has to be. Those are her words. It cannot be. There are no bad people at the Butterfly Center. There are no bad people involved in the Border Support Network. There are no bad people to see in this area. Why? Because she doesn't want to see it. And she doesn't want you to see it. And she doesn't want Guadalupe to see it. And she doesn't want us to talk about it. Shut it down, close your eyes, stop talking about it, and then she starts pounding her fist and demanding that Guadalupe look elsewhere. These are not the droids you're looking for. Listen.
Bad actors.
These are the bad actors.
And then you look at Paul Manafort. They just sentenced, they just indicted a banker who approved $16 million in unsecured and risky loans to Paul Manafort in exchange for a Trump administration appointment. That indictment came out the other day. Look at Mitch McConnell and the Russian oligarch with the aluminum company in Kentucky. Right. This is what I mean by just pull the string. You start looking at one of these guys,
and they have a lot,
and all the Russians and bankers around them, and oil company executives. So Perry, Kelsey Warren, and then all of these oil and gas companies, they're bankers and they're hedge funds, because they are all using other people's money to finance these projects.
But the problem with the hedge funds is very difficult to...
It's not just the hedge funds, it's the, investment groups, and with Prime and with Total, when you read there's another one, Enbridge, you start looking at them and they will, in many cases, or the industry online and other newspapers will tell you who they're getting their capital from.
Right. Okay. But just at the end, sorry, I know that you have to.
No, that's okay.
Perfect.
These are the people who don't care how many of us die.
That's true.
Not the Mark Lanes of the world, not the Juan Manciases of the world, not the Evan Dukes of the world. Those people genuinely care. Now, I've met Evan. I've dealt with Evan. Okay? I don't want to be in the trenches with Evan, because Evan understands what the media wants. If it bleeds, it leads. He's going to stand up and get shot, because that's going to make the front page of...
Notice that. She's like, don't talk about the people at the Butterfly Center. She said she knows half of the people that were in our study or in our presentation, right? I don't know all of the people, but I know about half of them. Well, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people in this network analysis. And I doubt very highly that if you knew half of them, that you didn't notice the crappy ones out of the other half, that you had no idea. If you were wondering if of that half that she did know, she was naively under the impression that they're all good people, this part of the recording should elucidate the fact that not only does she know that Evan Duke is a dangerous and violent person that she wouldn't want to be in the trenches at, but it's okay for him to be leading the encampment on her property. That's fine. Where, at what part of this interview, at what part of her presentation did she talk about the fact that, there's some protesters and activists that are hanging out at my Butterfly Center that are pretty dangerous, if it bleeds, it leads type of individuals that are going to go and get into confrontations with Border Patrol and the cops. And being that this is at the border and that this will be considered a matter of Homeland Security, some of the harassment that I've been alleging is coming from the Trump administration and the people trying to build this wall is probably founded, is probably well-founded, because I might have some people that are agitators and criminals that are being investigated on my property. So you should probably know that piece. She doesn't say that. Mm-hmm. But here, in this part, she admits, look, Evan Duke, I'm going to have to take back what I said about how all of these people are caring people, loving people. Evan Duke, not so much. You got me there. That guy's violent. He's going to do whatever it takes to get in the paper. And he knows that blood will get you on the front page. He understands that. So do I want to be near that guy when things go down? No. Take a listen.
The newspaper, it's going to start, whatever that you can turn into a revenue stream or more notoriety or whatever. But he wants to affect change.
Yeah.
These bad actors, these other people, the only change they want to affect is how much fucking zeros are in their bank account. That's the difference.
And they're not connected?
No.
That's my question.
Juan Mancias lives in abject poverty. He is not connected.
Sometimes I believe that you're right. It's totally right. But sometimes I believe that also these other very intelligent interests.
I've shown you folks over the past 3 or 4 years since Standing Rock happened, how many of these activists who live in their car. These are people that claim to be homeless. These are people that when the caravans were happening, like Laura Christina Livingston Berger, a.k.a. Lolly B, were telling people she couldn't actually sponsor any of the migrants she was asking people in America to do because she lives in her car. But we know that her daddy is a professor at Berkeley. No, wait, not Berkeley. What was it? One of those Ivy League schools. We know that she's grown up in wealth. We know that she goes to Burning Man every year. You know how much the tickets cost. Mm-hmm. We know that they travel all over the country and sometimes all over the world. And Juan Mancias is the all over the world kind of traveler. Juan Mancias has been all over the country in protests and all over the world. How does a man explain to me, and Mariana would know this, Mariana would know that over the period of time that she was having all of these people that she's working with on the Butterfly Center, including Juan Mancias, that he's traveling places all the time. She would have noticed that, okay? How does she not notice that not only Juan Mancias, but a lot of the people at her camp are people that claim to live in abject poverty, yet are traveling all the time? Like literally all the time. How do they afford that? How do they afford the lodging, the food, the travel? I don't believe that that many of these activists, and I certainly don't believe that one of the poster boys of activism, one of the two tribe headsmen that are being used in this campaign for asylum seeking, lives in abject poverty. You know what they say around here? A lot of them have their res home and their regular home. The res home is for show, when you want to get white outsiders to fund you. You take them to see your shanty on the res so that they'll kick out the money. Go on.
Utilize these movements to further their agenda. And I think, like, for example, Evan Duke's discourse, the anti-fascism, the fascism discourse really does more harm than good.
I don't think it does. We need to call them what they are. That's why I call Trump the pussy grabber in chief.
Well,
that's what
true.
he is.
Well, that's what he is.
I'm not going to call him the president.
Of course, but are they fascists?
Yes, they are. They will eat their own children. In fact, my boss tells everybody he's pretty sure Trump has fucked his own daughter. These are bad, bad people. Evan Duke is not a bad, bad person. Mark Lane is not a bad person. Mark Lane is another one living not in abject poverty, but very humbly. He's not profiting from this. He's forfeiting his sleep, his health, time with his children, a fast track through law school. There's so much else he could be doing. And yes, does he get invited to dinner at Henry Winkler's house? Yes.
Yes.
Big fucking deal. Has Henry given him a Tesla? No. Has Henry, no, the money is going to the foundation to genuinely help people. These are people doing good things and good work.
But Evan Duke?
Evan is a wild card, but I don't think he's not predatory. That's the difference.
Okay, I did a whole show about how predatory Evan Duke is, right? I showed you videos, audios of a Native American man calling himself Errol Medicine, saying that Evan Duke was no longer welcome at the camps because of his predatory behavior and his excessive drinking. This is something that many of the activists that were encamped with him at this butterfly center knew and have known for months. It wasn't until he was recently arrested that many people tried to distance themselves from him and disavow him because of his predatory behavior. And once again, I submit to you that this woman, who claims not to know a whole lot of nothing about these people, except she does, knows everything about them. I think she's known, and she does. She is willing to say that they're all good, right? They're all of the activists that she's involved with. They're all good. But the president, he's having sexual intercourse with his daughter. She won't call him the president. She's going to call him the vagina grabber in chief. She didn't use those words, but I will. She also says that, she makes astounding claims. Astounding claims. And then gives a pass to Antifa. She's like, yeah, I'm good. Guadalupe asks her, are you saying these people are fascists? Yes, she said. They are fascists. The president's a fascist. Listen, this is her opinion. Now she's being honest. Okay, now she is being completely unvarnished, out in the open. This is who she is. This is how she feels. Here it is.
Trump, Abramovich, these guys, Kelsey Warren, they are predators. They are animals.
Oh, I believe so. I think
They are
so, the
hell
same
bent
way.
on destruction.
Yeah.
Evan, he'll destroy himself. But he's not going to grab someone else and put them in front of the firing line.
That's what I don't know.
And I understand.
Okay, thank you so much,
and here,
Mariana.
I don't remember if I gave you a
No,
card last night or
I think
not.
I think you did, but anyway.
To the very bitter end, she defended the activists at the encampment and demanded that this professor, an expert in her field, focus elsewhere. And in this interview, which you have now heard in its entirety, she did not give this professor a shred of evidence to prove her claims against Russian oligarchs and everything else that she threw into this, because she threw everything into it, including climate change and people eating babies. These people will eat their own babies. That's what she said.
Yep.
Now, who is the conspiracy theorist and crazy person here? I mean, I don't mind hearing things that sound crazy, but I need to see the evidence of it. A lot of what I have presented to you over the last 3 or 4 years since I started investigating what happened to Kathleen Bennett at Standing Rock, I would have never believed. I would have never believed it if someone had just told me about it. I struggled to believe it when it hit me in the face. When I saw it with my own 2 eyes, I struggled with it. But I am wide awake today. I know who these grifters are. And if you're one of the people that subscribes to the idea that it is okay to cover up the activities of these individuals, these activists, these groups and organizations, these so-called activism leaders or Native American leaders, whether they be real Indians or pretendians, if you subscribe to the idea that it is better to continue to cover up the horrible things that they do because the overall campaign will be damaged in some way, because we're hurting people of color in the process, because we're hurting the issue of insert your issue of the day, then you are ignoring the very real danger and damage that is being created by these individuals. And you are asking me as a reporter to completely throw objectivity out the window and ignore what I see right in front of me. And that is not something that I am willing to do, not for a cause, not for a political party, not for an individual. So I hope that you found this interview with Mariana Treviño Wright interesting. I hope you share it. And I hope that you are willing to ask yourself some of those questions. I didn't wish to find this information out. I stumbled upon it in the course of investigating the Kathleen Bennett case. Many people have asked me why I have not spent the same amount of time focusing on anything else that they wish for me to focus on. And this is what I have to say to that. As a reporter, I will continue to expose what has been put in front of me. And now with the time and the expertise that I have put into this particular topic and these particular activists, who better to do it than myself? Who better to research this than people that are experts in the field like Guadalupe Correa Cabrera? And for that matter, who are any of you who are telling us to look elsewhere or do our work differently? Who are you to tell us what we can focus on and what we should be reporting? My boss is myself. I depend on the support of viewers and listeners like you so that I am not beholden to any political party, any company, or any individual boss. And I will continue to do my reporting like that. Thank you for sharing this show, and thank you for your continued support. You've been listening to A Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
Here on 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. God bless and good night.